Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What is up, everybody? Welcome one and all to the DueDissidence podcast. Keaton Weiss here. Russell just had a technical issue, so he is restarting his equipment and will be joining us shortly, knock on wood. But thank you guys all for making your way in here this evening. A regularly scheduled Sunday night, 7 p.m. broadcast of the DueDissidence podcast. We have a very, very full show for you guys tonight. For those filing in, Russell is here. He had some devices get unrecognized by his software, so he is shutting down his machine and starting it back up again, and so he will be in here shortly. But lots of stuff to cover tonight. We see a bunch of people in the chat, some regulars, some first-timers, so please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel if this is your first time here. That is very important, obviously. Now that Russell is underway here, getting his tech sorted out, we will do the Patreon scroll early this evening, so we want to start this show here by shouting out our Patreon members. If you go to patreon.com/DueDissidence or DueDissidence.substack.com, you can support this show. We like to shout out those who do, and we are on our way with that Patreon scroll going right now. We had a couple of new members sign up this week at patreon.com, so that really helps us out. In fact, as I believe you guys started that membership during our previous show. So it really helps us out. The more we get in here as members, the more content we can create. Stonewall J and Gary K are our new members this week. So thank you guys very much for signing up. As that scroll goes on, I will preview what we're going to be doing tonight. We, of course, have main segments here. Tucker Carlson dishing some dirt on the nature of the corporate media on a new podcast interview. We have Andrew Yang and Bill Maher sparring about the Forward Party with Alyssa Slotkin. It was sort of a panel-wide throwdown. Jon Stewart versus Larry Summers on inflation. And then, of course, the marquee story of the evening is that Donald Trump expects to be arrested on Tuesday in New York City. And that is something that I guarantee our take is going to lose us some subscribers on. So if you would like to subscribe to the channel to help make up for some of the loss in subscriptions that we'll probably suffer by explaining our views on that, then please go ahead and do that. That would be a big help. Thanks once again to our patrons. We got 2 scrolls out of you right now. Stonewall J and Gary K. 150 people in here right now. That's a great start. If we can please hit that like button and hit that subscribe button, that would help us out even more. We had some people comment in the chat. Jeezy, Jezzy, I guess you're Holly, as I understand that. You switched to Jezzy. You're saying that it's a beautiful day out there in Ohio. Not a beautiful day here in New York. March is really following the opposite trajectory that it usually does. They say March comes in like a lion, out like a lamb. Here it really came in like a lamb and is going out like a lion. It is cold here in March. Oh, there he is.
Boom.
Made it. What happened?
Your guess is as good as mine. The only theory that I have is I had another Chrome window open under the DueDissidence account, and maybe it didn't like that.
Oh, yeah. Probably doesn't like that. You want to knock that shit off. By the way, folks, how good was that vamping? I didn't miss a beat. Nothing.
I'm sure he did.
There.
Oh, come on.
Straight through.
Keep pro.
This guy's window dressing over here. That's what this guy is. Do
That's
this
it.
myself. Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly.
That's it. I'm only good for one thing.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's it.
I noticed the mic is a little bit like sound is a little in and out, so I don't know. I mean, don't mess with it, but maybe it has something to do with the connection. Maybe that's why it booted you. So if it boots you again, try coming back in just using the laptop sound. I don't know if that's the case. It might be. I'm not sure. Remember, it was acting up on us before. A couple days ago when we recorded our patron segment. By the way, folks, that Patreon segment is on its way. We recorded a patron segment about Kamala Harris on the Stephen Colbert Show. We recorded that a couple days ago. That will be out tomorrow for sure. Abiding71, thank you for the super sticker. We appreciate that, my friend. Tip jar is out and open. We appreciate all contributions. The more contributions we get, the more content we can create. We have a big project that we are probably going to be able to announce formally on Thursday's show. We are going to be discussing it early in the week, but we are very much looking forward to that. That is going to cost a few bucks to do, and so, like I said, donations go toward the proverbial van.
We can only do it if
dissident van. Yeah, exactly.
We can only do it if Trump doesn't get arrested. It's terrible timing for us.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We had them all lined up.
You never know what life is going to throw at you, right?
Yeah. Seriously, if he is taken to Manhattan federal courthouse on Tuesday, I will go down there to record it.
Yeah, film it. Absolutely. I would love to go. That would be so much fun. It'd be great.
Yeah. I'll interview the Trump protesters. It'll be a hoot.
I would love to go. Unfortunately, my wife is working and I have children to care for. See, we talked about this last week, how having children changes your life. I would be there yucking it up with all the deplorables, but doesn't look like I'm going to be able to make it. I warned everybody in advance, Russell, while you were getting your text sorted out, that we're going to lose a few dozen subscribers based on our Trump take. So if people want to subscribe now, they can help us make up for whatever loss in subscriptions we get.
Or if you want to become a patron.
Yeah, if you want to become a patron. Exactly. A patron is worth 1,000 subscribers, as they say. Ha ha. Just kidding. We love everybody equally.
That was Marcus Aurelius, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Patron is worth 1,000 subscribers. That's right. Yes, my smug parent, as JR says, I'm expressing my narcissism by staying home with my children instead of going. Ellen, thank you for kicking us off. Well, you didn't kick us off technically, but thank you for helping keep the party started. Response to the ICC warranting Putin's arrest. Asked me how I feel about U.S. child deportations. Yeah, did we put the arrest in the description? We did. We our main 4 segments. See, we're basically not doing.
We got a lot going on tonight.
We're technically doing headlines and main segments, but this is basically, as Russell described it, a T-shirt gun of content this evening. All the segments are, pretty substantial. Exactly. So we will get to all of that, Ellen. Thank you so much for the $10. Eric Husso for the $2 with all those rock and roll signals there. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate that very much. Kinky's here. Hello, Dissidents. All right, we got a good crowd over in here. And Tusker says, nah, even if I disagree, it's not worth unsubscribing. Well, we're not talking about you, Tusker. If you unsubscribe, we'll just stop the show. Like if you don't want,
we shut down the operation.
We just shut it down. Exactly. There's no point in going on.
We know at that point we've lost our way.
We failed. Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. All right. So let's get started. We do have a full evening
don't we have
material.
A 99 center up there?
Yeah, I got it already.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
I got that one. We are up to date. Our books are up to date, as they would say. All right, so we're going to get started here with our first headline of the night. Hunter Biden sues laptop repair shop owner, citing invasion of privacy. The lawsuit, a countermove against John Paul Mac Isaac. Again, I just love the name Mac for a laptop repairman. It's perfect, right? Escalates the legal battle surrounding the president's son.
It's like a stage name.
Yeah, right. At a sensitive moment. Hunter Biden has filed a sweeping countersuit against the computer repair shop owner who said that Biden dropped his laptop off and never claimed it, a legal action that escalates the battle over how provocative data and images of the president's son were obtained nearly 4 years ago. I love how they say provocative data and images of the president's son, as opposed to, content that suggests a corrupt relationship between the president and, I don't know, Ukraine, right?
What's your source? Where are you getting
provocative data? That's the Washington Post. This is the Washington Post.
Yeah, I read the CNN article prepping for this, and it was the same. Images of Hunter Biden having sex and in his underwear and taking drugs, and some things about his business dealings in China.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. Just insane. Now, the countersuit, by the way, this is a countersuit. So Mac was actually suing Hunter for defamation because Hunter alleged that he illegally leaked the materials on his laptop to the press. And Mac claims, and apparently according to Russell, I didn't look that deeply into this, I will admit, but Russell said that Hunter signed something to the effect of, hey, you go on a bender and leave this here after a certain amount of time, it's mine. And I have the
just
right
like
to
a
do
storage
with the materials
unit.
what I want. Right, exactly, just like a storage unit. And so he claims that, no, actually, I had the right to do with your laptop and the contents within it what I wanted after you failed to come and pick it up after a certain period of time. And now Hunter is countersuing for invasion of privacy. But the wording of that headline in that article, that first paragraph that we just put up there, says it all about the motive of this counter lawsuit. It is to put more emphasis in the public mind on the invasion of Hunter's personal privacy, to take public attention off of the contents of the findings of the laptop, i.e., what was it, 10% for the big guy? The new outlaw country hit coming up. We're working on writing a country song.
We're working on it. Yeah,
exactly.
2 country songs.
2 country songs. One of them, 10% for the big guy. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what that is about. Also interesting timing.
What's he upset about? I heard he's hung like a French bread. I haven't seen these pictures myself.
From what I hear, he's got nothing to be embarrassed about.
And that's unusual for the Irish.
Yeah, but he's tall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just tends to work out.
It's proportionate.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that he's especially well hung. It's just he happens to have the height gene. Not impressive, but lucky.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Luck of the Irish.
Luck of the Irish. Russell makes a lot happen with 5-6 inches of height there. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to discuss that on the air, but yeah, I do all right. I do all right.
I'm just saying it's not necessarily proportional every time.
No, it's not.
Right.
No, it's not.
Exactly.
And don't believe everything you hear about the small hands.
Right. Oh no, the small hands definitely. There's nothing to that at all. Trump was right about that. That's pure propaganda. That was a pure smear.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
It's I mean that goes back to the medieval Europe. They would hunt the small-handed.
Yeah.
All right. They would throw them in the village well in order to make the crops prosper in the spring.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, I just thought that was funny. It's especially funny since now, I mean, this was all already settled, obviously. But now there you have it from Hunter's mouth himself. No Russian hoax, no disinformation, real laptop, real contents on the laptop.
Oh, no. Oh, no, that's not true. He still does not concede. He has never conceded. He goes very much like the president that his father served. He's going with an all of the above strategy. It may be Russian. It may be disinformation. It may be hacked. It may be true.
But if it's not,
that's his position.
He's suing for invasion of privacy, if it is true.
Yes, exactly. And he's trying to take the legal angle because he did sign a contract. If he hadn't signed a contract, there would have been a lawsuit as soon as this broke. They would have sued this guy. There's a very ironclad contract that he had the right to dispose of this laptop the way that he wanted to because Hunter had abandoned it. So he's trying to take or his lawyers are trying to take the reasonable expectation route the idea that it's a reasonable expectation that the laptop company would not hand your information to Rudy Giuliani. That's a reasonable expectation for me. That's not a reasonable expectation for Hunter Biden.
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. How is it a reasonable expectation for the son of the president? Of course you can expect. I mean,
right. Of course not.
But
that's
that wouldn't try to capitalize on that.
That's the only angle they can take because he signed a contract.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's the only grounds they can present.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to our next one. Speaking of Russian disinformation, this was fantastic. These are really two headlines in one. We're packaging these together. The AP put out just a shockingly ridiculous story here about East Palestine, Ohio. Pro-Moscow
and it was just
voices.
weird. It was just weird. It just cut off. It was just like, yeah. Don't look over here. Look at the Russians. Bye.
This story here?
It was just like in and out. Yeah. It cut off. It was just like you know what it read? It read like a cable from the State Department. It was like 2 paragraphs of propaganda, and then they were done. There was like no wrap up to this article.
Yeah, pro-Moscow voices tried to steer the Ohio train disaster debate. Soon after a train derailed and spilled toxic chemicals in Ohio last month, anonymous pro-Russian accounts started spreading misleading claims and anti-American propaganda.
Yeah, that was just weird.
Weird, yeah.
Like, what kind of newspaper
propaganda
writes anti-American?
Yeah, exactly.
What the hell? What is this? A meeting of the Shriners? Like, what do you?
Well, yeah, exactly.
What is this?
They spread anti-American propaganda about it on Twitter, using Elon Musk's, of course, new verification system to expand their reach while creating the illusion of credibility. The accounts, which parroted Kremlin talking points on myriad topics, claimed without evidence that authorities in Ohio were lying about the true impact of the chemical spill. The accounts spread fear-mongering posts, that preyed on legitimate concerns about pollution and health effects and compared the response to the derailment with America's support for Ukraine following its invasion by Russia. So I just want to say this. Lying about the true impact, claimed without evidence that authorities in Ohio were lying about the true impact of the chemical spill. Let's cut to this article out in The Guardian on Friday the 17th. Levels of carcinogenic chemical near Ohio derailment site far above safe limits.
Yeah,
far above safe limits. The levels of dioxins.
Well, and that's after they pulled out the old Obama classic, right, and drank the water.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I would say that's lying about the safety level, wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, Russell wasn't even joking. Mike DeWine and the Ohio EPA director.
Oh, yeah, no, not joking.
To me. They went into a woman's house and
took
the
did.
old Obama half sip, fake sip.
Yeah.
The level of dioxins that's being tested here, hundreds of times past the safe amount.
Mm-hmm.
Over a month later, now a month and a half later, over 6 weeks later. And yet these two headlines can come out simultaneously. Pro-Moscow voices tried to steer Ohio train disaster debate. I mean, you can't make this shit up that they would blame skepticism about the safety of a town that has a black toxic cloud of smoke hovering over it. They're going to blame that on Russia.
Well, and you see the way they try to make it sound like a legitimate story is by saying, well, there are legitimate health concerns, but, it's not like the officials were lying, and it's not like our previous reporting on this was completely wrong. It's an amazing example of what we're going to get into later that, maybe not surprisingly at this point, Tucker Carlson called out. They're there to manufacture consent, and that's all. Like to the point of lying. We're right in the middle of these Twitter files dropping and showing that these accounts that are supposedly pro-Russian are half the time some prepper with 8 followers in Michigan.
Right. Exactly.
So you're telling us these are Russian accounts? How do you know? We've just seen how slipshod the way you draw those conclusions is. Can you tell us how you know these are Moscow aligned? Because and on top of that, there's nothing you're saying there that you would have to be Moscow aligned to assert. Everything you're saying there is true. It's all true.
It's really incredible. It's really just phenomenal how it'll always be summer of 2016 to some people, just always, and how they will rely on playing that card to tame a certain type of person who they know will just absorb that, right? And beyond that, you're right. The way they couch it, the way they say, well, they're preying upon legitimate concerns about health and safety. So they are going halfway to acknowledge, hey, you're right to be concerned about this. But this is manufacturing consent. What they want people to think after they read that article is, yeah, we don't know. Maybe it's safe. Maybe it's not. But the authorities are doing their best. Let's not get conspiratorial about it. Right. Yep. That's what it is. Because most people don't live in or around East Palestine, Ohio. Right? So this isn't real to most of us. Right? It's only real to the people there. So as long as they can create this, well, maybe not, but I'm sure they're doing their best. We don't want to accuse them of lying, right? We don't want to accuse a government that's bought and paid for by the corporation who's at fault for this. We don't want to accuse them of any sort of corrupt intent or ill motive, right? They would certainly not be misleading the people about how safe or unsafe it is to be there. Why on earth would they do that? Norfolk Southern, their PAC donated, I think it was $750,000 in the 2022 midterm cycle, half to Democrats, half to Republicans. They did it the right way. They bought the winner and the loser. They hedged their bets well. No, why would a government indebted to the corporation at fault, why would they try and obscure the risk of staying there in order to, lessen the burden of the corporation, lessen the debt that they owe to that town and the people in the surrounding area? Why would they do that? Well, if you think that, you know whose hands you're playing into? Putin's.
Yeah. At this point, it's so transparent. It's so lacking in any attempt to really justify their argument that it really is no different from reading red baiting propaganda from 1955. It reads just like that. The way you'll go back and you read that, and it's comical now. The way they're clearly manipulating the political conversation by tarring anything that threatens power as Russian or communist inspired. They've dropped the communist part, but now it's just Russia generally. Anything they want to throw the ick on, anything they want to rule out of bounds. Well, some Russian accounts said this. You know what? Let's say it is Russian accounts. It's possible for Russian accounts to amplify legitimate grievances too.
Well,
does that make the grievances not legitimate?
Well, that goes back to the 2016 thing again. Oh, these WikiLeaks came from Russia. Well, are they true or are they not true?
Right. Because there's not one thing they said there that is not true. Yes, the authorities did lie. We can go play that tape of them drinking the water.
Russia probably has a soft spot. See, there, we might be on, might be onto something. East Palestine, Ohio, Eastern Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, that's Trump country. A lot of people in that area voted for Trump. So Russia has a soft spot for them. Russia's really on their side. So Russia really wants to amplify their message because they helped Russia achieve its goal of getting Trump installed in 2016. So there you go. All right, we have a motive. Maybe they're not as crazy as we thought they were. That's called a motive.
They want to nestle East Palestine to the breast of the motherland.
Yes, they want to coddle the people of East Palestine.
The generous, pendulous breast of the motherland.
Tusker says she's surprised they didn't just run with Putin causing the derailment. Yeah, that's a good point. Why not?
Russian saboteurs.
Exactly. Susan Jacobson, thank you for the $20 super sticker. That is very generous of you. We appreciate that very much. Like we said, folks,
I'm always really impressed when people lay down that kind of money without ranting.
Yeah, without a rant.
I would never do that, man. If I'm going to give you money, man, you're going to hear my craziest inner thoughts. I'm going to force you to read them on the air.
Yeah. No, some people are just genuinely selfless and have small egos. Some people are like that. God bless them. God bless them.
Not us.
No, not us. All right, headline number 3, as Ellen requested here, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin over Russia's alleged war crimes in Ukraine. So the ICC which, as President
We are
Biden,
not a signatory of.
well, that's what I will
Yeah.
say. As Joe
I'm
Biden is
sorry. I
about
didn't
to
mean to step
demonstrate,
on it.
no, it's okay. That's okay. I think we're out of practice. That trip to India sort of reset our
The learning curve.
the learning curve. Yeah. Because we were doing well not talking over each other until you went away. And then when you went away, ever since you come back, it's like we're fighting for the mic again.
Not like before.
Not like before, but you know, just
Before-
shut the fuck
before-
up and let me read the headline.
We used to sound like a couple of drunks in a McDonald's parking lot.
Exactly. Yeah, so obviously, as President Biden is about to demonstrate, we are not members of the ICC, and so whatever this means, we could take it for what it's worth. But President Biden was actually asked about this on St. Patrick's Day, which explains the green tie. Here he is being asked his opinion of the ICC issuing a warrant for Vladimir Putin's arrest.
International Criminal Court issuing an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin.
Well, I think it's justified, but the question is, it's not recognized internationally by us either. But I think it makes a very strong point.
There you go. Now, why do you think
That's a great sentence, man. If you understand it, that's a really funny sentence.
Yeah, of course, because begs the question: why, pray tell, are we not members of the International Criminal Court?
I think we're waiting for Kissinger to die.
Maybe that could be it. Because it was George W. Bush who really spoke out against the ICC, warning that it would interfere with our operations in Iraq, in Afghanistan. Of course, those were operations that Joe Biden himself fully supported. And so that might explain why we have a long tradition of telling the ICC.
Get your fucking shine box.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I have a feeling Putin is going to take the same tact there. But yeah, the issue is out for Vladimir Putin's arrest. And this begs the question, you know, I wrote an article about a year ago, as soon as this war started, about whataboutism, right? Mm-hmm. Whataboutism, because my point has been from the beginning that if you want to hold Putin to account for whatever crimes he is guilty of in Ukraine, what you are advocating for must then be, if you are to approach this with any intellectual honesty whatsoever, you're advocating for a world in which, yes, we would need to be held accountable for our crimes. So it's not simply this abstract, philosophical, moral calculus that you're being asked to do. There are actual practical implications to what you are saying. Okay, if Putin is to be held to account, then so must we. And a world in which we are held to account for our crimes is a world in which the United States does not exist in the form that it does now, or anything resembling the form that it does now. So you're advocating for a completely different world that you cannot even begin to understand. None of us can. It's a different universe. And so that's what I think this sort of calls into question here, is the seriousness of people who take this tack that, well, yes, we are guilty of things, but it's whataboutism to invoke that as a way to sort of delegitimize a very important practical question of what is the world we want? What world do we want here?
Well, and what moral legitimacy does the International Criminal Court really have when it doesn't bring any cases against the United States?
Exactly.
Now, the rest of the world sees that. They see that, and it undermines their moral authority. You would need to prosecute. You're right. It's not just the obvious people like George Bush, Dick Cheney. To be the president of America is almost to commit war crimes. You almost can't really do that job under our current global regime without committing war crimes. We commit war crimes on a daily basis, and we support those who commit war crimes.
Well, this is why, as we'll get into at the end of the show in our final segment, the arrest that Trump is likely to face on Tuesday is this very dangerous thing, because it breaks with a longstanding precedent to let presidents get away with crimes. The reason we let presidents get away with crimes is because we basically hire presidents to commit crimes. right?
Right.
The point of
Right.
the job is to do crimes. And so if you start prosecuting presidents for crimes, you're not going to have any volunteers for the job because it's almost impossible to avoid committing them.
I'm not going to tell anyone you were here. You don't tell anyone I was here. Okay? I'll see you at the next disaster relief president's reunion. All right? Yeah, it is a dangerous precedent, especially prosecuting him for that.
Of course.
Because look, they say, oh, the right wing, they're conspiratorial. Come on, man. You're not going to prosecute Hunter Biden. You're not even going to investigate the things that came out on that laptop that implicate Joe Biden. You're not even going to look into 10% for the big guy, but you're going to arrest Trump for having an affair with a porn star. And actually, it's a very weak case because you would have to prove that his intent was to subvert campaign finance law and not to say hide this from his wife or protect his public reputation. And you can never prove intent. Generally, cases that rely on that will not be brought by the prosecutor.
All right,
So
well, let's
what
not
are they
step
thinking?
on the whole segment. We're gonna have to do this again.
All right.
Let's not get into it again. We'll put out a tease. By the way, get your singing bowl ready again because your mother was a hamster whipping out this checkbook here. Thank you, your mother was a hamster, because I'm cleaning out my bank account on Tuesday. Well, thank you. This is for you.
Is that because you think the banks are going to collapse? Is that it?
Yeah.
That's the
investing in the
special
old
$50
mattress
ring.
bank. Exactly. Mother was a hamster. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate that very, very much.
Well, soon enough you're going to need that cash to heat your house because you're going to be lighting it on fire.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh boy, 382 people in here. Great crowd. Hit that like button, please, so we can get some more people in here. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in touch with us. Very, very important that you do that. We thank you guys all very much for being here this evening. All right, we have one more headline before our Sunday Funny, a special Sunday Funny for you guys this week, and then we'll head into the main segments. Right-wing media seems to be warming to meatball Ron DeSantis down there in Florida, who is, of course, not an official candidate for president yet, but it looks like he is going to enter the race in May or June. That's what people are saying. That's what they're talking about. That's what they're all talking about. That's why they're arresting Trump this week, to clear the way for deep state meatball Ron down there in Florida.
Sanctimonious Ron.
Getting ready to pounce like a little rat that he is. That little cheese-eating, shit-grinning, ingrate Ron DeSantis, just getting ready to make his move while I am facing prosecution, or persecution, as we should say. But he made the rounds this week. He did an interview with Glenn Beck in which he articulated his style of, I don't know if we want to call this new right. It's not exactly from the Peter Thiel school of what the new right is aspiring to be, but it's not exactly the old Reagan right either.
No.
He explains how this is not just libertarianism, but he is employing a sort of proactive pursuit of conservative policy through the wielding of state power. That's the way I would put it. So here he is articulating this to Glenn Beck.
Things. We're slaying it all. ESG, we're slaying that. The DEI stuff, critical race theory, we're slaying that. We're creating a model for really, I think, what a free society should be. Yes, freedom for you to not be constrained by government. All conservatives have always believed in that. But also freedom for you to live your life without having the pathologies of the left imposed upon you from all the other institutions in society. And maybe that's a woke corporation. Maybe that's Soros funds a DA in your community, and then this DA says he's not enforcing the law, putting you and your family at risk. We had a Soros DA in Tampa that said he was going to enforce the law. I removed him from office, and he's litigating, but I'm winning the cases. And, you just have to recognize that the threats to freedom are more than just whether someone's going to come in and raise your taxes or pass a bad piece of legislation. So I think Florida, we're fighting full spectrum. I think more conservatives now across the country are recognizing that we need to fight full spectrum.
There you go. There you go. Russell?
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
This is what I've been saying for a long time. Going back to when we covered that article about the new right, that was very interesting. There's this whole kind of uprising younger right that really wants to bring these notions to government, and Ron DeSantis has been able to capture their intellectual theories, which I think a lot of the left just aren't even aware of what the conversation. I mean, the legit left, like our people. I think they're not even aware of the conversations that are going on. You don't have to agree with these people, but you really need to know what they're talking about. I would really recommend, if you want to understand the thinking going on in the DeSantis administration, subscribe to Chris Rufo's YouTube channel, because he is really coming out of academia. And in a lot of respects, he's functioning as DeSantis's propagandist in many ways. If you want to understand what they're thinking, he puts out a lot of videos really explaining it very clearly. So what DeSantis is saying there, that Rufo very often gets into, is that a lot of the conservatives are basically libertarian in their orientation and very suspicious of relegating power to the state. Now, this is why I say you need to watch things like this, because we don't think of the right that way, do we? We think of the right as very willing to use the powers of the state when it suits them. But this is an internal debate that they're having amongst themselves. So there must be a certain faction that's giving them pushback. Actually, did we cover that when Jordan Peterson actually was skeptical about them, some of the standards that DeSantis was bringing into the schools? Because
yeah, we did.
Yeah, he felt it was dangerous. So there's Jordan Peterson. So there's an example. And him and Rufo actually had a debate on online about that. Rufo's argument, and I would assume DeSantis's, based on what he's saying there, is that the left is using the organs of the state to impose its agenda on you. So you must use the organs of the state to fight back against that agenda. That if you do not fight back against that agenda without using the state, you're going to lose. It's the only way to do it. That is what you should expect from the right going forward, because unlike the Trump movement, that's an actual concept and theory of politics. Trump is just a Catskills comic that a lot of people see as a brick through the window of people they hate. And in the end, my belief that DeSantis will beat Donald Trump in a one-on-one primary is based in that, because unlike Democrats, who their politics are mostly aesthetic, Republicans actually have an ideology. So if you can make the argument that you're the one who can use the state to effectively legislate into reality a conservative America, that beats, hey, you know what happened to me the other day? I got arrested by Alvin Bragg. You believe?
Well, you know, it's not just that, right? I mean, yes, what you're saying is absolutely true. But I remember on election night 2016 watching the returns come in on CNN, and it was actually David Axelrod who said, this is a primal scream from the voters. The Trump movement is more, as he put it, a primal scream from people who feel as if they are yesterday's news to all relevant institutions of power. Right. Now, in 2016, that scream happened to be loud enough to win. But notice it hasn't really been loud enough to win since. They have fared poorly in every national race since then, even in the midterms here this last time where they won technically. They still did not do nearly as well as they had hoped. And that's because the Trump movement is this expression, as I've said over and over again, of a collective despair, of a collective hopelessness. And there are moments in history where that carries the day, like in 2016, but usually it doesn't. Usually what you have to do is you have to take that sentiment and harness it and weaponize it in a way that is effective and proactive.
Right.
And that's what Ron is talking about. Ron is talking about taking this idea that society has moved past you, and rather just scream at a Trump rally, lock her up, drain the swamp, this and that. You actually have to strategize, huddle, and figure out a plan to actually execute a counterattack. And that's what DeSantis represents.
Exactly. And I have believed for a while that in the end, that's going to win over the Republican base. And particularly that it would win over the Christian conservatives in the Republican base, because for the same reason that they voted for Trump, they are entirely strategic. They will subvert everything else to seeing their agenda realized. They knew what Trump was. You know, they're religious people. Oh, it's God working through him. Who am I to question why he picked such a crude instrument? We're all sinners anyway. So probably the most prominent true Christian activist is Matt Walsh. And we have Matt Walsh giving what's a semi-endorsement of DeSantis. And I think that's the shape of things to come.
All right, here it is.
Well, one thing is clear. It's been clear for a long time. The media is terrified of Ron DeSantis and of his candidacy, his potential candidacy for president. Ultimately, they hate DeSantis more than they hate Trump. And I've been saying that for a while. And the reason is that they recognize that Ron DeSantis is effective at wielding state power to advance a conservative agenda. Okay, he's done that in Florida. He's able to do that. He's willing to do it. He knows how to do it. That's something that Trump never learned how to do. He didn't. And so Ron DeSantis is a greater threat to them.
There you go.
That's it.
There you go.
That's it. And I think Matt Walsh is a pretty good gauge of the thinking amongst the Christian conservative base of the Republican Party. If he's articulating that, that's probably a pretty prominent view in that quarter.
Yeah, no, I think he's right about that last part. I think he's wrong that the media hates DeSantis more than Trump.
That's the one thing he said I don't agree with.
Yeah, he's definitely wrong about that.
But actually, you could read that as him trying to pump up Ron DeSantis.
Of course,
because he knows with the Republican base, that goes a long way. Who does the media hate more?
Right, exactly. All righty, so that wraps up our headline segment. We did the Patreon scroll already, Russell, while you were getting your text straightened out, which means we're heading right into our Sunday Funny. Now, this week, the Sunday Funny has to do with a personal story about the Dobular family, because a certain something came up on one of our previous streams last Sunday or last Thursday that we feel we should address. So, Russell, you want to take the floor for a minute?
Okay, so I misspoke a little bit last Sunday, and I'll take responsibility for that. I said that hip hop came out of Sugar Hill, which is to the north of where I am in Harlem. And that was wrong. And a lot of people came into the comments and, they were getting really fiery about it. It came out of the Bronx. And then people were talking about the exact address, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, and the exact neighborhood, Morris Heights, that it came out of, and the exact DJ Kool Herc. And I don't know if people are just ignorant of the history of hip hop and don't know the Dobular name. Like, I don't know if they were messing with me. Maybe they know the whole story. But actually, most musicologists believe that my great grandfather, Menachem Dobular, was the first hip hop artist. It was something he stumbled into by accident. He ran a Victrola repair pushcart on the Lower East Side, and he would very often be repairing more than one Victrola at the same time. And he'd be moving the records to make sure that the repair was properly done. And he also used to swear a lot in Yiddish. So one day his wife, Sadie, got out a wax cylinder and recorded this. And he listened to it. He said, you know what? That sounds pretty good. Let's run it up the flagpole, see who salutes. So he only released one album because nobody really saluted. And we have that track. It's a self-titled album, Menachem Dobular. So I will give that a listen.
Track one.
Okay, so that's a toe tapper, right? It was ahead of its time. It just didn't catch on at the time. So now, if you know your music, if you know your lyrics, some of that might have sounded very familiar to you, of course, from the classic Rolling Stones song. And here we can hear a little snippet that was borrowed from my great grandfather right here.
I can't give it away on 7th Avenue.
All right, so actually, the family did sue the Rolling Stones. Here we see the article that was in Rolling Stone magazine. Funny enough, Mick Jagger is shattered over accusations that his hit single of the same name was plagiarized from the work of an obscure Lower East Side Victrola repairman, Menachem Dobler. That's my great grandfather. At least that's the word from sources close to the legendary Rolling Stones frontman. The track at the center of the lawsuit, Schmata, 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 was included on Dobler's first and only album, the self-titled Menachem Dobler. Although described at the time by the New York Times as a cacophony of meaningless sounds, that's so terrible. I can't believe they dissed him like that. And violent Hebraic shouting, the album has lately been embraced in New York's dance subculture. This was in 1975, particularly among Bronx DJs whose record spinning and scratching techniques seem to be rooted in Dobler's unique method of screaming Yiddish phrases over scratchy klezmer music while attempting to repair up to 3 Victrolas at once at his pushcart-based shop. Jagger denies the allegations, despite the similar, some might say identical lyrics, and Jagger's admitted ignorance of the Yiddish language. So, it was a little hurtful to me that so many people in the comments section either were intentionally erasing my family's contribution to hip hop or out of ignorance. But now that you know that I am kind of a descendant of hip hop royalty, I don't want to be treated any differently, but I hope I'll get the appropriate deference and respect on this subject.
I hope so, but we have to cut the audience a little bit of slack because your great-grandfather, Menachem, was never as famous as he could have been. You mentioned that was his only album that he put out. He was actually canceled before he could really take off because, some of the lyrics in some of those songs were pretty offensive, but this is the line that got him canceled. It wasn't on that track. It was on a different track. But this line, really, on the Lower East Side, you can't say shit like this. He's had a line in his song, "Schleppin' through my shtetl on Ludlow Street, saw a shiksa with a tuchus too sweet for a sheet." Now you can't.
But come on, man. That's a great rhyme he laid down there.
It's a great rhyme, but you can't talk like that on the Lower East Side. I mean, that's an offense to his community, and so unfortunately, they couldn't forgive him for that. He was excommunicated. He had to leave the Lower East Side, and he moved to Flushing, Queens, which is where he, eventually, had children of his own, and a couple generations later, you have Russell Dobler here, born in Flushing.
That's it. And reportedly he was stooping a shiksa on the Lower East Side. That's who that line was written for.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
that was, the Jews are always very paranoid about losing the bloodline. So that was another reason they
losing the
drove him
bloodline, and that sheet dig is really
that was
yeah.
That was
everybody whatever. Everybody strays a little bit, but the sheet. To diss them over the sheet. Come on.
Yeah, and that's something they, that's also telling tales out of school. That's something they don't like to talk about that in front of the goyim.
Exactly. So there you have it. The forgotten history, the secret history of New York City hip hop, which has its roots in the Dobler family.
I hope we've educated your minds
exactly.
with this realization.
Tusker, thank you for the $5, especially because the crime is kidnapping children, yet the U.S. also says it's a war crime to not evacuate children from a war zone. Yes, that's a good point. That's in response to Ellen's super chat about the detention on the U.S. border and the ICC. Steve Wolfbrandt, first time on this channel. Steve, if I remember correctly, you're from our Facebook page. I remember you. I think I remember you. If I'm getting that wrong, I apologize. If I'm not, thanks for making your way over here from the Facebook channel. And either way, please hit that subscribe button. If this is your first time here, please, folks, do subscribe. Kinky, thank you for the $2. Great story, Russell. Yes, that was a fun one. We enjoyed doing that one. That was a lot of fun. For being honest, I think we prepped that more than we prepped the actual contents of the show tonight.
We probably did. I was running around because at the Halloween Adventure store in New York, it's kind of an institution. It just got sold and taken over, and they're so badly stocked. It didn't even occur to me to call them to see if they had beards and stuff. So I wound up like having to run around 125th Street to find the stuff, which was interesting.
Yeah, that Halloween store was an institution. My father's cousin used to live right around the corner from that store. She had the best location of any apartment in New York. 10th Street between Broadway and 4th. Was it Broadway and 4th? Yeah, it was Broadway and 4th. Great location. 5 minutes to the East Village, 5 minutes to the West Village, 5 minutes to Union Square, 5 minutes to Soho. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. Loca-Cola, $5. Hello, you guys. I'm a new subscriber enjoying the content. Well, thank you, Loca-Cola. Thank you for the $5, and thank you for finding us. We hope you stick around.
Can I address something that's not a super chat, just so people don't think this?
Sure.
All right. So you should probably learn some Yiddish before you make ignorant statements. A shiksa is actually a white girl.
Yeah.
It's a white non-Jewish girl.
A white non-Jewish girl. Yes, exactly. Yeah, shiksas are white girls. That's what Elaine from Seinfeld. She had the shiksa appeal.
She had the listen. I brought to my grandfather. I brought home from college this blonde, skinny, big boobed girl, long legs, the whole thing. She walks out of the room. He leans into me, goes, "That's some shiksa."
You did good.
You did well. You know, he wouldn't have wanted to see me marrying her. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, but did good for now.
Did
good
for
for
now,
now, as they would say. All right, let's make this happen tonight, shall we? So for our first segment, this is a fascinating one. Tucker Carlson appeared on the Full Send podcast last week and reflected on his career in the media, his biggest regrets as a newsman / commentator, and how his views of his own industry have evolved over the years. And so you get a moment of introspection here from Tucker Carlson sitting in this low-budget podcast studio. This clip went pretty viral for what I feel is pretty good reason. So here we are. Let's take a look.
I've spent my whole life in the media. My dad was in the media. Like, that is a big part of the revelation that's changed my life, is the media are part of the control apparatus. Like, there's no, yeah, I know, because you're younger and smarter and you're like, yeah. But what if you're me and you spent your whole life in that world, and to look around and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. Not only are they part of the problem, but I spent most of my life being part of the problem, defending the Iraq war. Like, I actually did that. Can you imagine if you did that?
Well, what do you think? What is one of your biggest regrets in your career?
Oh, defending the Iraq war.
That is it?
Well, I've had a million regrets, not being more skeptical, calling people names when I should have listened to what they were saying. Look, when someone makes a claim, there's only one question that's important at the very beginning, which is the claim true or not? So I say, you committed murder or you rigged the last election. Before you attack me as a crazy person for saying that, maybe you should explain whether you did it or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for too long, I participated in the culture where I was like, anyone who thinks outside these pre-prescribed lanes is crazy, is a conspiracy theorist. And I just really regret that. I'm ashamed that I did that. And partly it was age, partly it was the world that I grew up in. So when you look at me and you're like, yeah, of course they're part of the means of control, I'm like, that's obvious to you because you're 28, but I just didn't see it at all. And I'm ashamed of that.
Isn't that what the media tries to do, though?
It's their only purpose.
Right.
They're not here to inform you. Really? Even on the big things that really matter, like the economy and war and COVID and like things that really matter that will affect you. No, their job is not to inform you. They are working for the small group of people who actually run the world. They're their servants. They're their Praetorian Guard. And we should treat them with maximum contempt because they have earned it.
There you have it. So that is obviously a level of introspection that you will not see from 999 out of 1,000 people in his field, which is mainstream corporate media. This is the first time we've really seen anything like that from any of these people, and could very well be the last time. What this, I think, goes back to, I mean, this hits on an idea that I had during the 2016 primary, and I think that was a turning point for Tucker as well. When you saw the manipulation of processes try and weed out candidates who the powers that be obviously did not want making it to any position of power, be it Sanders on the left or Trump on the right. You saw obviously a Stop Bernie movement on the Democratic side that succeeded, and then you saw the same sort of coordinated moves out in the open on the GOP side with the Stop Trump people. They went as far as to say, hey, if you live in Texas, vote for Cruz over Trump in the primary. If you live in Florida, vote for Rubio.
I remember that. Yeah, they just wanted to
Trump.
break up the vote. Yeah.
They just wanted to keep Trump under that majority threshold so that at the RNC they could give it to someone else if they wanted to. And what that suggested very strongly to me, and I think to a lot of people, including Tucker, is that there is, as he mentions, a group of people, a sort of bipartisan elite, whose goal is to control the boundaries of debate. And by controlling the boundaries of debate, they make whatever disagreements we have with each other out here irrelevant. So that's why when people criticize Tucker and they go after Tucker and they say, well, why would you platform Tucker? Why would you even do a segment like this that makes him look good? It's because I think what Tucker came to understand during that cycle is the same thing that I came to understand during that cycle, which is that, yes, he has a lot of views that I strongly disagree with. Before we can even get to a place where we hash those views out, we have to get to a place where those disagreements actually matter. Because as long as the debate is manipulated in the ways that he's talking about in that segment, whatever disagreements we have are irrelevant. It's just pro wrestling, right? We're just screaming at each other. Democrats who backed Bernie Sanders in 2016, who have been Democrats their whole life, thinking that Democrats actually wanted to achieve universal health care, we realized during that cycle that all of our talk about the need for universal health care was we were just talking to a wall the whole time. We were just screaming into the winds the whole time. We weren't actually talking to anybody. We weren't actually getting closer to achieving anything. Similar maneuvers were made, like I said, on the Republican side. And I think he came to that realization at the same time a lot of people did. And if you notice, his programming has been very different ever since. That's why he stands out. That's why he's number one in his time slot, not only among Republicans, by the way, but among Democrats as well.
Yes. Well, not only is he number one in that time slot among Democrats, he's number one among Democrats. More Democrats watch Tucker Carlson than watch any host on MSNBC. And this relates to what I was saying last week about DeSantis when I said there is this huge hidden Democrat vote for that kind of politics, and you could see that in the midterm results in Florida and all of the counties that DeSantis flipped. And it's yet another example like what we saw in the Twitter files, where the Republicans, if you time traveled somebody from 1974 to those Twitter hearings with Taibbi and Schellenberger, and you ask them, who are the Democrats and who are the Republicans? They would definitely think that Jordan was the Democrat and that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was the Republican, that Plaskett was the Republican.
Right.
So at that point, like, who do you side with? This is where it's very confusing. Anybody who is just going to come in and try to make it as simple as, oh, well, you're reinforcing Tucker. Well, yeah, come on, man. He's the only person with a prominent platform saying what he just said there. And as Keaton points out, if you can't get back the basics, a combative press that's actually informing the public, all these other things fall by the wayside. They don't matter. It's a very confusing time to be on the left because most of the people who are advocating for meaningful structural changes, who are actually pointing out that the emperor has no clothes, are people whose views we don't really agree with otherwise, but we have a common cause with them in terms of social media censorship, in terms of how bad the corporate media is, in terms of how the press should function. And we don't have that with the establishment version of left.
Sure, because without overcoming those barriers, you're living in a world where your disagreements with Tucker may as well be, as I said, pro wrestling, because there is a bipartisan consensus that basically seeks to make politics run on a sort of autopilot, right?
Right.
No matter who wins, who loses, things more or less stay the same within this very narrow lane. Sometimes it veers a little to the left, sometimes it veers a little bit to the right, but the boundaries are in place right here. And no matter what happens, nothing is going to get outside of these. And so you have a political elite that wants, like I said, a sort of continued political stalemate. Right. And what they also want is a media apparatus that manufactures consent for that system.
Like that East Palestine article.
Of course, right, exactly.
That's what they want. Don't get stirred up. We've got it all under control.
Right. Absolutely.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Exactly.
That's what we're living in. Everything is completely flipped. People who should be our natural enemies are more often articulating our views. It's just it's craziness. I mean, that's why I'm not going to go out and vote for people like Ron DeSantis, but I'm not going to go out and vote for someone like Joe Biden either. I'm just not. I can't either way.
Right. Absolutely. Andre Johnstone, YouTube search Australian foreign policy explained. All right. Well, you got your little plug in there. Thank you for the $2. We appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. Folks, we got 450 people in here. That's a nice crowd. Please hit that like buttons. Maybe we can hit 500 by the end of this stream here. Please hit that like button, and please hit that subscribe button. Do a little like check, as we always do. Please like this stream and subscribe to the channel if this is your first time here. Very, very important that you do that so you can stay in touch with us. You can also go to patreon.com/DueDissidence and support the show. DueDissidence.substack.com. You could sign up as a paid member or as a free member and stay in touch with us. You basically join our email list. We do videos, obviously. We put these out on an audio podcast, which is also published through Substack. And we write articles from time to time. So we are a multimedia one-stop shop over here in the DueDissidence.
Not as often as we used to.
Not as often as we used to, because we do more videos than we used to. But yeah, we still do from time to time drop a literary work on you guys. All right. So speaking of boundaries and the manipulation of political boundaries, I wanted to do this next segment. This didn't get as much play online as I think it deserved, but this was an interesting little squabble that erupted on the Bill Maher panel this Friday. On the Friday episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, Bill confronted Andrew Yang over his lack of policy specifics in his forward party. So they were talking about the SVB collapse and subsequent bailout and inflation. And Bill Maher brought up Andrew Yang's signature policy, the UBI. But then he went into the fact that Yang's signature policy is nowhere to be found on the Forward Party website, and sort of confronted him over the vagueness of the Forward Party platform. So let's take a look at this. We will stop and start. This is about 3.5 minutes, but we'll take this as we go.
Your third party, because I read your website, and it's a bunch of mush. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying it's not like specific. It doesn't even mention this. And why start a third party, which is a long shot anyway, if you're not going to be bold and what?
Oh, I'd love to dig into this.
Please do.
Yeah. So what I determined was that our current political system is not going to address poverty or climate change or polarization unless you actually fix the incentives. And it was a U.S. senator who said this to me, and everyone needs to understand this. She said, we're at a point in American life where an issue is worth more to us unaddressed than addressed. Because if I lean forward to solve the problem, what happens? I get beat up by my base, my job security goes down, I get attacked.
Right.
So we're in a no compromise zone. So if you wanted to, let's say, alleviate poverty in America, you have to fix our democratic system. This two-party system is not designed to deliver solutions.
I just have
All right, let's just stop it there. That premise is fair enough, and I think it's actually right.
Sure.
Because there are certain examples, and
Well,
by the
especially
way,
now.
Yes, especially now, right? And especially in a situation like when Roe v. Wade is overturned, there are states that had opportunities to codify reproductive rights in certain capacities. It would have involved compromise with the GOP. But a lot of Republicans wanted to protect abortion rights in some capacity because they could sense what a liability this was going to be in the midterms, and turned out it was. And you had Democrats in office refuse to make those compromises specifically because they would rather run on the issue, win or lose. Right? That's what he's talking about when you say a problem is worth more unsolved than solved. So he is absolutely correct that the system does disincentivize compromise, and that in certain scenarios, compromise is necessary. Now, he goes into a place that I agree with far less as this goes on, but I just wanted to establish that first of all. Russell, you got anything to add before we continue this?
No.
Okay. All right, here we go. Oops, sorry. I almost deleted it. My bad. Here we go.
Yeah, but again, that's...
I just have to say, so I'm not 100% sure how a different party, I mean, you have to explain how that's going to change the whole system. But here's the thing. If you have a senator, as someone who's running for Senate, if you have a senator who's saying, the incentives are wrong, so I can't do the right thing, that's the problem, not the fact that we need another party.
I love whoever put
Former
that
Pentagon
up
official.
as she
Love it.
said that.
Yeah.
If the incentives are wrong, here, let's just back this up. This is Representative Elissa Slotkin. She is now running for Senate in Michigan, centrist, normie, Democrat type. So let's just hear what she says here.
If you have a senator who's saying, the incentives are wrong, so I can't do the right thing, that's the problem, not the fact that we need another party.
Okay, that is a bizarre point.
Okay. So tell me which senator that doesn't apply to.
Well,
Can you name one? Can you name one? Because as a veteran of this whole squad debacle, I can tell you, even if they sound good before they get in there, once they get that cushy spot, Mama Bear sits them down and it's all over.
Well, that's why it's called an incentive. An incentive is not an incentive unless it influences behavior. Right. So she's saying, well, if you get a senator in there who says that because the incentives are wrong, I'm not going to do the right thing, that's a problem. Well, that's a logical impossibility because it's not an incentive at that point. You only call something an incentive if it influences you. And if the incentives are corrupt, then obviously corruption will follow from that. And she makes the point here. She goes on.
That you have people who won't take risks. You have people who are going to put their reelection over anything else, who are worried from a primary from their left or for right, 100%. But if you put people who are brave in those places, if you put people who are saying, like, look, if I don't win my next election, no one dies. I can go on. I'll find another job.
Oh, like AOC?
Then you actually see the incentives change because then they want to do the right thing. That is part of why our government doesn't work. It sometimes is people.
So we don't have enough control over our government coming from the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, well, I also want to highlight the premise of this conversation now shifts to the brave ones are the centrists. Right? The centrists are the ones being brave by defying the left fringe of the Democrats and the right fringe of the GOP.
Yeah, that's their line.
It's brave to do what people like Elissa Slotkin want to do and what, frankly, like 90% of people in Washington want to do. And this gets to a deeper sort of rift in their understanding of this, which I'll get to in a minute, but I want to get through some more of this first.
Elissa, first, I love what you're saying, but there was a guy in Michigan who bravely voted to impeach Donald Trump at great personal risk, Peter Maher, and he lost his seat in part because Democrats boosted his extremist challenger because that challenger is going to be easier to beat in the general. We have an incentive system right now. If you step up like Peter did or Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney, you're out of there. And so there are people that see this and say, okay, I get it. But the way out is to do what they did in Alaska, which is why Lisa Murkowski is the only Republican senator who voted to impeach Donald Trump, who made it back and was up for re-election in 22. You know why? Because they got rid of the party primaries in Alaska. That's why Sarah Palin lost to Mary Peltola. That's why Lisa...
Okay, so what this gets at here, citing Liz Cheney as this beacon of integrity for defying the Trump movement by voting to impeach Trump, Maher there, Kinzinger there. The mistake that he makes here, and I think it's a mistake that Slotkin makes too, although Slotkin is a hack. I don't consider Yang to be a hack. I think he's doing something he actually feels is the right thing to do, even though I don't agree with him on several things. But he's making a conflation here that is false, which is what he calls extremism. He doesn't parse the two types of extremism there are. There's ideological extremism, and then there is partisan extremism. So you have people who are very centrist, like Hakeem Jeffries. He's not an extreme ideologue, but he is absolutely an extreme Democrat partisan who would absolutely forego compromise with the GOP if it meant boosting his party's fundraising numbers or their vote counts in certain races. Then you have extreme ideologues, as they would say. I'm not saying I would say this, but, you know, the Squad types and the Marjorie Taylor Greene types, those are who they would say are extreme, but they're extreme in a different way. They are ideologically extreme in their eyes. But Yang never parses those things. So when he talks about extremism and talks about the courage to defy extremism, yeah, okay, it takes courage to defy the extreme partisan hacks, which make up 90% of the people in Washington, but it doesn't take courage to toe a centrist policy line.
Right.
Right.
Well, because that's what they all
those
want.
two things. He just totally conflates those two things. Where the point, if you can't differentiate between those two, then what Bill Maher is saying is right. Why have a third party? Because what you're saying is what? We need more Liz Cheneys and more Adam Kinzingers? There's plenty of oxygen for those two in the Democrat and Republican bases. It's just that, you know, once they defy the partisan aims, right, of the Trump base, they get turned on. But they don't get turned on for ideology. Liz Cheney voted with Trump 96% of the time, right? So ideologically, she's extreme with Trump, but from a partisan standpoint, she's more moderate in the sense that she's willing to buck party orthodoxy when she feels that he stepped out of bounds. But if you can't make that distinction, then the party's not going to gain any steam, because what you're advocating for is more centrism, and there's plenty of room for centrism in the Democratic and Republican parties.
Frankly, when you look at what Liz Cheney did, I never read that as a moral stand. I read it as a member of the outgoing aristocracy trying to strike out against its replacement. That's what it was about. Her name was Cheney. She was part of this older Republican Party that was used to running things. That I never felt like it was really a moral stand on her part. But that aside, yeah, I agree with Bill Maher here. What's the point now? He's not even promoting UBI. So to have a third party that doesn't have an ideological objective, which seems to be what he's trying to do here. Okay, yes, we already have a bunch of mushy centrists who like to posture about how they're not captive to their party. So what? You're going to give us people like that from another party to do what? To hammer out bills that send more money to Ukraine? Because that's where that ends up, right? If you don't have some kind of an ideological perspective, if it's all about making Washington work, you know what? People don't realize this. Washington works now. Democrats and Republicans vote together 90% of the time. All the spending, all the military budgets, all that stuff, all the day-to-day operations. What do you think? They're fighting over most of the functioning of government? nothing would get done. Right? They fight over very at the margins, really. They fight over things that they can fundraise off of. Abortion, culture war things. A little bit on taxes, not even very much there. So you're just describing, more Amy Klobuchar's. This sounds like the Amy Klobuchar party.
Right. Like an Amy Klobuchar party that doesn't have any of the quote unquote fringe wingnuts in it. Right. But the fringe wingnuts are very limited in their influence now anyway. And to the extent that they disrupt the partisan operations. Right. They don't actually pass fringe legislation. Like they're not influencing policy. Right. They're affecting the margins of each party's numbers in the House and Senate because, whatever, Liz Cheney stepped out of line, so they primaried her. That's a safe red seat anyway, right? But, in a case like Peter Maher, I think that's the guy's name, Peter Maher, he voted to impeach Trump. They knocked him out so they could put a GOP candidate in there who they thought would be more beatable. He was, so Democrats picked up a seat, right? It's all just balance of power shit. It doesn't affect policy because the centrists dominate policy. And the thing is, most centrists, this is the point I'm trying to make. I know this is a bit complicated. Most centrists in Washington are perhaps not extreme ideologically, but they are extreme partisans. That's why nothing gets done, because of the extreme partisanship, not because of the ideologues, right? The ideologues have very little influence, except in a situation like what the Freedom Caucus did this last month, where they said, McCarthy's not getting the gavel.
They have more influence in the Republican Party because in the Republican Party, they actually have some fucking balls.
But even so, that's only about committees and the weaponization of the government. Like, what legislation is going to be different because of that? Nothing.
Well, you know where you're going to see this, if I'm right. I believe you are going to see a conservative revolution that is akin to what happened when Reagan came in, where there's this complete transformation. And you want an idea of what that's going to look like? Yeah, look at what DeSantis is doing in Florida. He's going to do it nationally.
Right. Indeed. And full disclosure, a very good friend of mine works high up within the Forward Party, and she actually asked me to write a little memo to them about what people like me would look for in a Forward Party. And so I voiced a lot of these concerns to them, and doesn't seem to have made much of an impact so far, but I'll keep hoping. All right, so should we go on to our next segment here? We got any comments that we want to catch up on? No, we're all caught up on our super chats. Perfect. All right, beautiful. Bookkeeping seems to be pretty much in order. This is moving pretty quickly for a show as packed as this.
For a couple of mouthy Jews who go on and on every subject.
Exactly. Cool Blue.
Being pretty disciplined.
Being pretty disciplined, pretty on point, pretty pro. Cool Blue, thanks for the $4.99, my friend. Centrists are owned by the corporations, the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical companies, Wall Street, and the deep states. Others also applicable. Yes, that is absolutely true. And thank you.
That's it. I was going to jump in there, but I didn't want to talk over you. Yeah, I mean, when we say centrist, they're not centrist to the country. It represents the center of elite opinion.
Well, yeah, of course.
Of the opinion of their class, not of us,
and not of most people. Look, support for Ukraine.
I mean, us, the people,
the people, right? Support for funding the Ukraine war is now under 50%. Only a year after it started, for a country as propagandized as this one, that's actually quite impressive. That less than half of us think we should fund World War III. But I mean, just think about that. That is a quote-unquote centrist position. I don't think there's anything centrist about funding a potentially nuclear war. That seems rather radical, in my view, right? But that is the bipartisan consensus opinion in Washington, and so that defines the center, because that is where the center is.
I think it's also just the propaganda magic trick is wearing off. There's only so long you can keep the public in a constant state of fear, anxiety, and paranoia before eventually it's like a drug. You build up tolerance and you need a bigger and bigger hit to get the same effect. and eventually it's just not going to get an effect. I think we're starting to get there. They've played this game since 9/11. You're really talking about 22 years of trying to constantly keep the public, oh my God, there's an enemy there. There's an enemy there.
Right.
There's an enemy there. I mean, eventually people are going to start to say enough.
Exactly. Beverly, thank you for the $20 with your Stop Wars avatar. I like that one a lot.
Thank you.
By the way, there was an anti-war rally, the Code Pink rally, took place in Washington, D.C. over the weekend. We'll have some clips for that probably for Thursday's show. But it apparently went fairly well, which is great to hear. I know we did that satirical bit last Sunday, poking a little fun out of them. Because a lot of the organizers there boycotted the Rage Against the War Machine. I was encouraged, though, that Nick Branagh, co-organizer of the Rage Against the War Machine, did show up and march with them. He didn't make a big deal out of his presence there, but he did show up, and there's video of him marching with them, which I think sends exactly the right
classy.
message. Exactly. It sends exactly the right message. All right, so now we have another debate here. This was a fun one. This was Jon Stewart versus Larry Summers. So on his recent episode of The Problem with Jon Stewart, Jon hosted Larry Summers, one of the architects of modern neoliberalism and a sort of on-again, off-again economic advisor to Joe Biden. First, they said he was going to be an advisor, and then they say, well, he's not really maybe officially an advisor, but he has the president's ear. They speak from time to time, whatever. But he has defended the Fed's raising of interest rates to try and curb inflation, having previously warned during the Build Back Better talks that increased spending would overheat the American economy. And Stewart challenged him, citing that Summers wants government intervention to help loosen the labor market and drive down wages, pointing out the inconsistency that you allowed corporate profits to drive inflation for so long, and now you want to pull it back after the profits are already in the bank, but you don't want the workers to get paid what they feel they deserve. So we're going to cut in. This was a 7-minute clip. We're not going to play anywhere near all of that. We're going to play the last minute and a half or so. But Larry Summers thought he was owning Jon Stewart because Jon Stewart now works for Apple TV, talking about all the profits that Apple has made. And so he says, let's talk about Apple. Why shouldn't Apple increase prices in a market where there is increased demand? So let's hear Stewart come back at him with what I thought was a pretty impressive line of argument.
And mobile. So let's talk about Apple. Let's talk about Apple. Do you think Apple should just sell phones for less and not have enough phones? What would you have Apple do?
You're saying to me, John, market forces are market forces. And if demand goes up, are you suggesting, young man, that Apple should charge less than they could charge? Let me flip that on you. When there's a tightness in the labor market, what you're saying is the workers shouldn't do the same. That the workers, just following the same capitalistic principles that allow Apple to charge more for their phones, shouldn't charge more because wage inflation is driving inflation.
That's not at all what I'm saying, John.
That's exactly what you're saying.
Actually, it isn't. Every worker should get as high a wage as they can. It would be a terrible idea.
But the Fed is going to intervene. The Fed is going to intervene to make that not possible.
No, the Fed is intervening to control the overall level of demand growth.
And what will that do to the labor market?
Much faster.
What will that do to the labor market? What will it do to the labor market? It will.
It's likely to lead to
looser labor markets.
A somewhat looser labor market.
Exactly.
We hope to minimize that consequence.
There you go. Exactly.
Okay. All right. Larry Summers is kind of the Bill Kristol of economics. He's somebody who's been wrong about everything throughout his entire career, who inexplicably is consulted, is respected, speaks about the economy. Under Clinton, he was one of the architects of the dismantling of Glass-Steagall. He was he was one of the stewards of dismantling regulation in the banking sector, which clearly we've been paying for ever since, particularly in 2008, and again now. We'll see how that plays out. He actually was one of the people who handled transitioning Russia to a post-communist economy. And him and his buddies at Goldman Sachs did such a good job of that we wound up with Putin. You're really upset about Putin?
Right.
Why don't you tell it to Larry Summers?
Yeah.
Because scumbags like him exploiting the situation, driving them to a point that you literally had people trading tires for eggs, and high school girls in a poll in that period, 75% of them said that they would consider prostitution as a career path. Thank Larry Summers for why you got Vladimir. Oh, why on earth did the Russians get behind a strongman? Because they saw what life was going to be like in partnership with their new American friends. And they said, you know what? Bring back the czars, right? With a little veneer of democracy, but bring back the strongmen. Okay? So the idea that this man, like a lot of these just criminal miscreants who were responsible for the Iraq war, are still, their opinions and advice are still solicited on the talk show circuit is incredible. That's Jon Stewart at his best. He didn't let him get away with it. He tried to make it sound as if he has labor sympathies. No, people should ask for the highest wage that they can. Okay, but this policy is aimed at increasing unemployment. The way they are choosing to approach the problem of inflation, and it is a problem, is on the labor side. Why don't you? And that was Stewart's in the more extended segment. He's arguing about the price gouging and the profiteering. That's what led him into trying to do this gotcha of, well, do you think Apple shouldn't be able to charge more? And he was surprised, because he only deals with scumbags like himself, to hear Stewart come back with, yes.
Yeah, right.
What do you think he was going to say?
He even challenged Stewart
This isn't
himself.
your fucking Clintonite friends.
He said, if you could get more money,
right,
then would you be gouging? And he said, of course I'd be gouging if I exploited, my opportunity to get paid more because Apple had more and there was more demand for my work. And that was what he was talking about. He was talking about, look, if you're going to say that market forces ought to rule the day here, then where we are now, workers have an advantageous position within that market. And it's funny that you would want to take that away from them after letting corporations rack up these profits for 2 years.
Right.
That's the
as
thing.
Soon as it
the
goes
timing
to the
is
people.
funny. Right.
Well,
the money is in the
it
bank
shows
already.
you, scratch these liberals, and in the end, they're as Randian as Paul Ryan.
Right.
Yeah, once you scratch them, because that's Ayn Rand's basic worldview. It's okay when the entrepreneur and industrialist profits. When the workers try to organize their labor to get the best value for their labor, they're thieves, they're rats, they're vermin stealing from the system. That's what you really think. That's what you really think. Otherwise, you wouldn't, as a first resort, go after labor. You'd go after corporations. It doesn't even occur to people like this to go after the corporations first.
No, I mean, and you're right. I mean, that is Jon Stewart at his best. Jon Stewart is a mixed bag at this point because he is smart enough and shrewd enough to be able to dismantle people like Larry Summers when he wants to. He dismantled Jim Cramer. That's a legendary interview. He dismantled going back to the era when Tucker Carlson was a partisan hack. He went on Crossfire and dismantled
That was one of the best things ever on TV.
Yeah, another legendary segment. So,
he
comes up
him
over and
a
over
dick
again. A dick
on TV.
Yeah. Called him
Straight
a dick on
out called
TV.
him a dick.
Exactly. So when he wants to do good, he's very good at it. He's very good at slaying these major people, right? When he goes after big fish, he's great because he is smart enough to take them on. Unfortunately, I think he spends a lot of time nowadays not going after the big fish, but taking the low-hanging fruit of like finding some, Alabama attorney general, whoever that was, to take on, gender issues with or something like that. He tends to want to try and shoot fish in a barrel when he can. And that's less impressive to me. But he does have the skills to do really good work, and every once in a while he does. And this was one of them.
Yeah, he does. When he did that segment and some other segments that he's done, it did make me reevaluate some of what they did on the Daily Show, because they very often did that. They would find somebody who couldn't fight back, and they would platform that person when they didn't like what they represented, rather than to get somebody who could really debate them or argue with them.
Right. I mean, they would almost do like a version of the jaywalking segment where Jay Leno would go out and ask these idiots trivia questions on Hollywood Boulevard. They would do that, but with somebody who, was just completely unequipped to fight back. But, Larry Summers, man, that's fair game. I mean, he's one of the most influential people of the last century. And so absolutely, you should have him on and expose him exactly as he just did.
Well, and it tells you all you need to know about, people are going to come at us soon as election season heats up, even maybe some of our own people. You have to support the Democrats, don't you see? In my opinion, it's going to be Ron DeSantis. Don't you see what he's going to do to the country? You know what Obama did when he came into office? He hired Larry Summers. All right, I'm not voting for these people. I'm done. I don't care if Biden's running against Beelzebub himself. I'm not voting for him.
Well, that's a good segue into our final segment of the evening, but we are over 500 people in the audience. So that, in fact, I think that warrants a singing bowl, celebratory ringing of the bowl here. We've cracked 500. So thank you guys very much for coming in here. We appreciate that. And please hit that like button, and please hit that subscribe button. Very, very important if you're here for the first time. We want you to come back a second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth time. So please hit that button. We're at 6723. Can we get to 7,000 subscribers by the end of the month? I think that's a reasonable goal.
Oh, yeah.
Can we hit that?
I'd say so. I'd say so.
Help us get there. Help us get there, folks.
Well, we're gonna do that tassel strip show thing, right?
Yeah, right.
That's how we're gonna. That's gonna put the asses in the seats.
Yeah, if that doesn't, what will? Right?
I've been practicing my nipple twirl.
Yeah, there you go. He's been getting that going. Exactly. Double singing bowl episode. Yes, Jacob. Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate it. Jacob is designing a website for us, actually. I've been in communication with Jacob. We're going to kind of repurpose our website to incorporate everything we do. And so, we're looking forward to doing that. But thank you for all the help with that, Jacob. We appreciate it. I want to give you
man. You see how much better I'm getting with that thing?
Yeah, no, you're doing very well with that thing.
Yeah,
PMC $3.99. Thank you, PMC. Appreciate that. Excellent. All right, should we get into our final segment of the evening? We always save the more controversial one. Oh, see, since you rang the bell, we lost 20 viewers.
Yeah,
so, no, we scared them away.
I identify as a person with boobs, so I have them because I say so.
Well, you might have them anyway. I don't know. I've never seen you with your shirt off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you guys only see me from here.
Right.
You don't know what's going on down
Yeah, I don't know
here.
what's going on down there. We only see the upper torso. This shirt actually
could be a submarine down here.
It's funny. My wife was just telling me before we went on how this shirt is way too small on me. See, under this, I have an undershirt. I was cooking in an undershirt, and I didn't want to come on the show in an undershirt. I figure that's rude. We don't overdress, but I don't want to underdress that bad, right? So I just went into the closet.
I've worn an undershirt since I was like 12.
Yeah, well, I wore it because I was cooking
It's like
red
your
sauce.
parents make you wear those.
Well, I was cooking red sauce. I was cooking meat sauce tonight, so there was sauce spitting out. So I figured I didn't want to wear a nice shirt that could get ruined. So I wore my undershirt with it, and I couldn't wear the undershirt on the show. So I went and I picked this shirt out of the shirt closet, And my wife did point out that it is too small, and it is. It's way too small. The shirt looks ridiculous on me if I walk around in it, but I keep it for the show because I like the shirt. It's a nice shirt, and you guys can't tell that it's too small. It looks perfectly normal. I roll the sleeves up, and you only see me from here up anyway. So
right, exactly.
You know,
How do they
part
know?
of my podcast wardrobe. Why throw it out?
Yeah, exactly. I'm wearing my chaps down here.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's my kink. Podcasting in chaps.
Podcasting in chaps. Tusker with the $3 super sticker.
Also
Thank
the
you, Tusker. Appreciate it.
memoir that I'm working on now.
All right, let's do our final segment of the evening. No video for this one. This one's just going to be a talking head segment, as they say. We have one exhibit that we want to get to, but Donald Trump expects to be arrested on Tuesday for charges connecting to hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels in 2016. So over the weekend, he posted the following to his Truth Social account. Now illegal leaks from a corrupt and highly political Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which has allowed new records to be set in violent crime and whose leader is funded by George Soros, indicate that, with no crime being able to be proven and based on an old and fully debunked by numerous other prosecutors fairy tale, the far and away leading Republican candidate and former president of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest, take our nation back.
That's a Trump classic.
Yep. And Russell will be hanging out on Tuesday, I guess, outside the courthouse to see if there's any protest action going on.
If it happens. If they, yeah, I'll go down there.
It's looking like it's going to happen. I mean, I doubt he would tweet that out if it wasn't going to happen. I mean, it seems like something
Trump.
he wouldn't want to do. Yeah. I mean, if he's expecting it, I think there's a pretty good chance that it will happen.
The fact that they haven't denied it implies it'll probably happen. Because it seems like if it was just Trump talking out of his ass, they would have come right out and been like, "That's not true at all."
No, I think you're right about that. And I think our audience is going to be split on this because we have a pretty viewpoint diverse audience, broadly speaking. But I think we have especially, yes, we are very, very proud of that. Absolutely. But I think we have an especially diverse arguments on questions like this, because this kind of gets to a lot of the themes that we've been talking about on the show in past days and weeks, even months, really, about abuse of power, state power, corporate power. I think this is a huge mistake. I think this would be a huge mistake to do this. And you say, well, why? Don't we have to establish that when a president breaks the law, he will be held responsible? Isn't a core tenet of our democratic system that no one is above the law? Okay, sure. But if we really believed in that, Trump would not be the first president to ever face prosecution. And he wouldn't be 99% likely the last, right? They're not going to apply this principle across the board now. If they were going to do that across the board, I think some prosecutors might have something to say about the revelations on, yes, the Hunter Biden laptop. I'm sorry. You have a sitting president acting in defiance of his previous administration, meaning the Obama White House's policy towards Ukraine. All of a sudden, Joe Biden, Rambo on Ukraine, when he's president, $100 billion plus in weapons out the door, exacerbating a conflict that is likely to go global and perhaps even nuclear. And you had, I'm sorry, his son.
Remember how Trump was going to start a nuclear war?
Exactly. His son making $80,000 a month on an energy board of the country that he's funneling this money to. Once again, in defiance of his previous administration's policy agenda. That's not suspicious. We're not going to look into that. That's not of greater consequence than hush money payments to a porn star. This is what I mean. They're not going to apply this evenly. This is not a new day where presidents are held accountable. This is the permanent state doing a hit on a guy who they want to take out. That's all it is. And it's anti-democratic. It is a gross abuse of power, in my view. Yes, I know there are going to be people who think I'm crazy for saying that, but that is how I feel. So hate all you want. Like I said, straight dope here. And I think it's a huge, huge error. And so that's what I think about it.
I don't know. After this episode, Keaton, I think we need to flip the side of the screen that we appear on. 'Cause
right.
I think you're the brown in this red-brown alliance.
So I should be on the right, is what you're saying? I can make that happen right now.
Yeah.
There we go. I fixed it.
Yeah, look at you, you right-wing maniac. No,
I'm going to switch it back because our mirrors, it looks like we're staring at different corners of the room if we do it. But for next time.
Honestly, that was my brain couldn't process that.
Yeah, so I'll keep it. For
Okay, so we're in agreement here. If you were going to do this, you should have done it to George Bush. George Bush ordered torture, which is clearly illegal under our laws, right? You're not allowed to do that. So if you were going to do that, you should have done it to Bush and most of his cabinet. Condoleezza, definitely Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld, they all should have been prosecuted. You're going to go after this guy for hush money on a blowjob? That's what you decide to break this 200-year precedent of not prosecuting presidents for their actions in office? You're going to go after him for this, especially, as I was mentioning earlier, stepping on the later segment. My apologies. Yeah, they really don't have grounds for this because you would have to prove intent. You would have to prove that he paid that hush money to circumvent the campaign finance system. If he can argue effectively, well, no, it was because I didn't want my wife to find out. I didn't want this to become to embarrass me in public. Well, then his argument, which has been his argument all along, that he's the victim, actually holds weight. He could go after her for blackmail. Right? That's illegal. He could say he's been blackmailed. How are you going to prove his intent was campaign finance? It sets a very dangerous precedent, and this is in keeping with a lot of what we've been talking about. We've been talking a lot about January 6th and the way the January 6th people were prosecuted, unlike the protesters and rioters. Some did riot, not all, not most, but some did, in the George Floyd protests. Now that you have opened up this door in both cases, you have no idea how frightening this country is going to get when we have our next Republican president, because now you have set a precedent that you prosecute people, right? Next time protesters go burn down a police station, they're going to get the January 6th treatment. And now with you doing this with Trump, who's to say they're not going to prosecute Joe Biden when he leaves office? I'm sure there's enough there. I would bet you there's more there than there is on Trump. What's to stop them? Now you've opened the door, and now you've set this precedent. The only way you can think this is a good idea is if you think Democrats or liberals or blue MAGA or even the left, the real left, don't do things that could be prosecuted under the same premises. And if you think that, I don't know where you've been. Even if you feel like the George Floyd protests were justified, which we do, still, if this is the legal precedent you're setting, the damaging property, committing terroristic threats, attempting to overthrow the government, you're burning down a police station, you could definitely prosecute that as domestic terrorism if you want to. And this is what's most interesting, and I think it's something people in the whole spectrum of the left have a hard time wrapping their heads around. The Trump administration didn't behave that way when they could have. We, given the opportunity, took that approach. Now, the fact that you like these protests and you don't like those has nothing to do with this discussion. Now you have set a legal precedent for how they're going to handle situations like that going forward. And when you try to say you can't do that, they're going to say January 6th. What's your response? Well, that was a bad protest and this is a good one. Is that what you're going to argue?
Yeah, look, I just want to make a point because somebody tweeted at us after that episode where we mentioned that difference in treatment between the BLM protests and the January 6th protests. They took issue with that because they claimed that we suggested that there was no crackdown on the BLM protesters, and they linked to a podcast that showed FBI
they threw them in those vans.
Exactly,
and, sure,
and so I just want to make
that's not going
clear,
to prison for 5 years.
Exactly, and it's not going to prison for 5 years, and it's not publishing photos on the internet and encouraging people's neighbors to report anyone who was here so that they can throw the book at them. The numbers are not even in the same league. It's not the same sport. Never mind the same ballpark. We're not saying there was no crackdown. I would never say that, obviously. Right? But out of the 1,000 people at the out of the 10,000 people at the January 6th rally, not even the ones who stormed the Capitol, right? Just the ones who were at the initial rally, the speech. I think there are about 10,000 people there. 1,000 people who were at that event, including many who did not enter the Capitol building, are facing federal charges.
Right.
That's 10%.
Right.
How many millions of people marched in the George Floyd protests? It was the largest protest by number of people in the history of the U.S. Let's just say it was 3 million. I think it was far more than that. But as I believe, and please, if I am wrong, please call me out on this, but I believe the number of George Floyd protesters who have been prosecuted with federal crimes is somewhere around 300, a little over 300, out of at least 3 million. It was probably way more than 3 million.
Right.
But 300 out of 3 million is, if my math is correct here,
it's like 1%.
1/10 of 100th of 1%. So you're talking about, on one hand, 10%, and on the other hand, 100th of 1%. Right. It's not to say that, there was no crackdown on BLM protests and there was no infiltration of the BLM movement.
I
of course there was. I would
believe
grant that 100%.
I think
but it's
I
not
wrote
the same.
about
It's not proportionally the same. Yeah.
I think I wrote an article talking about that because I was covering that from the angle that Democrats went right to blaming Donald Trump when meanwhile their politicians had voted to renew the Patriot Act very recently. How do you think he had those powers to throw those people in those vans? They never make those connections. I'm pretty sure we covered that. We might have even podcasted about it.
I think we did.
Yeah, we're aware of that, but it's still not the same thing. Next time it will be.
Yeah, who knows? Absolutely. You set a precedent like this. Rick says Clinton was blown inside the White House. Okay, speaking of him, Bill Clinton, speaking of getting a blowjob inside the White House, he bombed a pharmaceutical factory in Sudan, claiming that it was a chemical weapons factory based on very shoddy intel.
That was a classic. Yeah.
It was based on very shoddy intel, and he did not bother to vet the intel further to make sure he wasn't bombing a pharmaceutical factory, because the bombing of that factory just so happened to coincide with the date that Monica Lewinsky was set to testify, and he needed to wag the dog.
They called it the Monica bombs.
Exactly, the Monica bombs. Right now, that, by the way, talk about the ICC. That's a whole different issue. But just in this context, and I'm sorry, there's no evidence. Like I said, this was one of the things when Trump won. I thought maybe, and I thought this for about a day, and then it became very obvious to me that this wasn't going to happen. I thought maybe this will create a new consciousness in America where we start holding the powerful responsible for their shit, because we have such an egregious example of a president who knows no limits, who cares nothing about the limits of his own power, cares nothing for the systems that are put in place to restrain him. Maybe this will create a new conscience, but it didn't. It created bullshit. It created Russiagate. It created Rachel Maddow. It created nothing, right? It's all just crap. And that's the same thing
because it was always partisan.
Well, yeah, and notice,
look,
by the way,
at the same exact time that they're losing their minds about Donald Trump, they're rehabilitating George Bush. At that point, I was never able to take anything they had to say about Donald Trump seriously when they're going all weak in the knees about George Bush sharing a candy with Michelle Obama.
Of course. And notice one more point, because we have Tusker now in the waiting room. She's called in. Tusker is a Patreon supporter. Patreon members get bonus content and call-in access to the show. So sign up if you can. But I just want to make this one more point before
especially
we
the crazy ones. We want
Yeah.
the crazy ones to sign up and call in.
and call in. That keeps the show entertaining and unpredictable and fun.
Yeah.
Notice the moving
we want
of
the
the
people who are going to
goalposts.
talk about what their dog is telling them to do to their local senator calling us.
Notice the moving of the goalposts here by the libs. Notice during the campaign, it was, we have to defeat Trump to save democracy and restore the soul of the country. Once they did that, turns out they weren't really happy with that. It was only a few months before we now have to arrest Trump and prosecute Trump and jail Trump to save democracy and restore the soul of the country. I thought that was what elections were for. I thought you settled scores in a democracy by campaigning and voting and by debating and by letting the popular will dictate the political direction of the country and who wins, who loses, who stays on the field, who goes home. I thought that's how you settle political scores in a democratic political system. Not by finding some bullshit technical campaign finance charge from 7 years ago and taking the unprecedented step. This has never been done before in American history. And I contend it will never be done again to anyone but Donald Trump.
Oh,
You're gonna arrest him now?
I don't know. Now that you open this door, we're going to go full Argentina, man. It's going to be every former president is going to be under risk of being arrested.
It depends
by their political enemies.
That depends. That depends on who the next presidents are, how in the club they are, right? How willing they are to go along, right? I mean, one of the things that's been notable about this so far is the silence of Trump's Republican 2024 opponents. The only one, to my knowledge, who's spoken out against this is Vivek Ramaswamy, who came out and said, you know, this is terrible. And look, I think it's a big mistake for Meatball Ron to stay silent on this because he can't afford to offend the Republican base too much. And this is an example of,
Well, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, he should not be mum on this. He should absolutely not. I don't think anything. I don't think anyone should be mum on this. Like I said, I think it's an extremely dangerous road to go down. I think it's anti-democratic.
It is.
I think it's unfair. It's very unfair.
Well, and this is why I tell people they should listen to some conservative media, because I don't think I don't think enough people on the left, broadly defining that term, understand the level of anger and resentment that's being built up among conservatives. And if you do get a Republican president in 2024, which I feel is almost a guarantee, you have no idea what hellfire is going to get rained down on specifically Democratic politicians and people that are seen as political enemies, because they're going to feel, well, you went there first. And they're not going to feel like they have to hold back to respect any norms or guardrails, because you pushed those norms and guardrails to a place where they can do what it's not hard to get conservatives to send out the guys in the black boots, right? Like now you've opened that door for them to be able to say, but you did it first. Why wouldn't they do that?
All right, let's admit Tusker. Her mic is on. Before we admit Tusker, I want to give a shout out to our Rumble viewers. We got a big crowd on Rumble this evening, 73 watching right now, which is a big crowd for us on Rumble. And that's not reflected in our live count here that Russell and I see in the studio. See, we see you right there. You're on my phone. Thank you to our Rumble viewers. We love you.
They probably think I'm Russell Brand. Yeah. They saw it in their search. They came here by accident.
We've actually been getting good view stream numbers on Rumble, which is great to see. So if you guys have a Rumble account, go subscribe to us on Rumble. And if you're on Twitch, I don't know who's on Twitch, subscribe to us on Twitch, because once we get 100 followers on Twitch, we can start uploading videos to Twitch. So it'll be like a second YouTube channel. We can't do that unless we get 100. We're pretty low now because we have no idea how to use it. But
we don't know what we're doing. We have to start playing Hogwarts Legacy on there or some shit.
Yeah, right.
To get a following.
Tusker,
I'll be Slytherin.
Yeah, right.
You be Hufflepuff.
I think all you got to do, Russell, is I think you might have to get in bed with Vosh, and he might be able to teach you how to Twitch.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to want to help us.
No, I definitely don't think that.
He watches 5 minutes of this show. He's
No, I'm surprised he hasn't gone after you and sent his followers after you guys yet.
Well, we're not on his radar yet. We need more subscribers for that.
And we have never done a Vouch attack.
Yeah. It's dangerous.
We're getting to it.
We'll get to it. You know.
He did a segment. I wanted to go after. I can't remember what it was now.
Yeah,
I forget.
It's such vomit. But it just incoming, like all the old K Hive bots entirely refocused.
You know what? I think that's really why we haven't done it, because he sucks so bad. Keaton, correct me if I'm wrong. I can't get through enough of him to do a hit piece on it.
His segments are just so long. They're so long, and it's not dense content at all. Like, I mean, we banter a decent amount, but he will go through these long stretches. It just takes forever to make a point, and it's a lot of work to try and put together a roast of Vosh, but we'll get to it someday, I'm sure.
I mean, that guy is like the David Hasselhoff of YouTube shows, because I cannot explain that guy's career at all. I don't understand why anyone's watching.
I don't understand the
even if you share his politics, I don't get it.
I don't understand the aesthetic, and Vosh is not the only one. I don't understand these streamers with like the pinkish purple light in the background.
Oh yeah.
Like, what is
like
that?
Neon,
that's fucking weird.
Like
it's
neon look. Yeah,
it's like this weird neon, but it almost looks like a children's room. There's something creepy about it. Like, it's just very off-putting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand that whole vibe.
And it just reinforces the conservative contention that there's a whole, pedo ring going on there on the left.
I mean, it does look like a tastelessly decorated children's room. It really does. I don't understand why you would use those kind of like neon pastel colors to decorate your podcast space. And I'm not, listen, I'm not very feng shui myself. I got a high school yearbook curtain in the backdrop.
Well, look, I don't know if I want to be part of the Vosh, like, I don't know if I'm brave enough for that just yet.
Oh, is this true? Is this true? His dad, somebody says here his dad works at Google. Is that what it is?
I thought his dad
was he able to like rig the algorithm?
In that case, we probably shouldn't go after him. We should probably cozy up to him.
I thought his dad had something to do with Hollywood, but I do think that he has some deep state connections that I've heard reference to, but without going into that. About the whole Trump thing. See, fundamentally, I kind of agree with you guys. Like,
well, that's good, because we just said if we lose you as a subscriber, we're off
I mean, I don't necessarily think that. I mean, I'm just saying that I wouldn't mind seeing former presidents prosecuted under a different system. But under this one, I just feel like it's just going to be anti-establishment, like any type of candidate that the deep state wants to go after, that they want to go after, that's who's prosecuted, and all the establishment figures just stay in place.
Yes, I agree.
So it's not necessarily that I, don't think that the others should be arrested. It's just that I know that they won't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is also being done. One of the reasons I call this anti-democratic is not just because of, the attack on Trump, but this is meant, I believe, to intimidate the Trump base, to delegitimize Trump supporters, to sort of invalidate his entire movement. And I'm not sympathetic on a policy level to his movement, but his supporters have a right in a democratic system to express their views and vote for who they want to vote for. And these all strike me as efforts to just tell them that their mode of participation is not legitimate. And that's why I call this anti-democratic. And a part of me feels like they are trying to bait people into another January 6th type event on Tuesday in order to further, sort of shut them out of whatever process takes place in 2024, which is for my advice. And like I said, not a Trump supporter myself, But my advice, if you are protesting on Tuesday, do not take that bait. You must remain peaceful, because if anything violent happens on Tuesday, they're going to take you off the board. That's what they're trying. That is what this is intended to do. As much as it is to make an example of Trump, it's also intended to make an example of people who support him. And so, do not take the bait. Do not be violent. Do not, protest peacefully if you want to. That's your right. But I really feel like, to Tusker's point, this is directed at anti-establishment figures as a means to not only demonize them, but demonize anyone who, is involved with their campaign or their movement in any way, meaning even, right down to the voter level.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because that is the chatter in conservative media. Like, they are saying you need to be really careful about how you react to this and how you protest. Don't be stupid.
Of course.
I mean, if they can learn that from January 6th, I wish that was something that the left would learn in their protests. I mean, it's been a long known thing about agent provocateurs that go to these protests.
Right.
And it seems like instead what you get, I watched the BLM protest. I mean, they're just the celebration over it, like some of the violence, the destroying things, like all that other type of stuff, just pallets of bricks being left around. And then, like, I get, like, part of it is, I get the aesthetic of it. I get, you're showing a sense of revolt and stuff, but, normal people don't really like to see that type of stuff happening,
Right. No, exactly. Of course.
From either side.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You empower the right wing. I mean, it's what John Lennon said. The establishment is going to poke you. They're going to pull your beard. They're going to try to get you angry. And once you get angry, they have you. Once you get violent, they have you, because then they know how to deal with you. Then they know how to handle you.
But I think to this point, a reaction like a January 6th style reaction to a potential Trump indictment, arrest, a booking him, if he gets booked, he will go, he will surrender himself. He may even take a mug shot, which the libs are going to have a field day with that, circulating the mug shot. We're going to see that on every fucking Ukraine flag waving idiot's, handle for the next few weeks, the Trump mug shot.
True that.
And then he will post bail, and then he will have to stand trial at a date in the future. We'll see what date gets set. Obviously, he is a candidate for president, so that could really throw a wrench in things. I'm sorry, what's that?
I said most likely he'll win.
That's what a lot of people are saying. There are a lot of people who are saying that this is a gift to him, that he will become the president if they do this. And look, I think that's a tough thing to say. Look, ultimately, I gotta say, and this sounds like a boring answer to that. Ultimately, I think the fundamentals of 2024 are going to be more or less what they were in the midterms, which is it's the Republicans for the taking if they want it. They have to come up with a few answers to a few questions. No one wants their 13th century anti-abortion crazy bullshit. And no one wants the consumer protections of the ACA stripped. They already did away with the individual mandate. That was the most unpopular part of it. They already did that. So they have to leave people's Medicare and Medicaid alone and find some way not to scare them into thinking that they're ushering in a sort of Handmaid's Tale dystopia, and they'll win. If they can't do that, they might lose. Because to me, that's where the country's at. That's where the swing voters are at. Do I think a Trump indictment might help him in the primary? Yes, especially if DeSantis doesn't come out against it. I think it will be a huge mistake for Ron DeSantis not to condemn this if it happens. It might help Trump in the primary there. But in the general, I think those are the dynamics. Like the Democrats are handing it to the GOP. And it's a question: is the GOP smart enough to just to take it?
I think Trump's base is smart enough to understand what goes on with it, and I think that it will be. And I saw someone in the comments earlier saying it would be a Streisand effect. If they were to arrest him and do that stuff, that's literally what it would be. It's unprecedented. It's an attack. Why not these people?
Right.
Why not Obama? Why not this? And they're just going to have a larger revolt that ultimately ends in the sympathy for Trump. And yes, I think it will help win the primary. And just like you guys are saying, I think, the Republicans can win it pretty easily as long as they don't make sort of like just really fundamental mistakes as far as because I would have to say I really underestimated how much the Roe versus Wade thing would have an impact on the midterms. I thought the economy would overrule that.
Well, to a certain extent it did. The Republicans did win the popular vote by quite a bit. They won the House, right? But it's just that abortion issue proved too toxic in too many places for Republicans to get the governor's seats and the Senate seats that they needed to really call it a clean sweep. But they're going to have the same problem in 2024 if they don't answer those things. So the general election, to me, that's what it kind of rides on. But you're right in the sense that, look, most people see this as a political prosecution. There's just no question about it. It's just
which it is
such a joke. It is.
Of
course it is.
Like
it's
if you were
ridiculous.
going to prosecute a president, there's a long line of people for you to go after.
Yeah.
Okay, most of them are dead, but Bush is still alive.
Clinton's still alive.
Clinton's still alive. Exactly. And this is what I'm saying. The next Republican president, they're going to go after Obama on Fast and Furious. They're going to, you've opened the floodgates here to what the possibilities are for a Republican administration in terms of going after Democrats through the legal system.
And also, just as a quick reminder to the audience, hopefully my audio still works. I'm going to switch away and read something here. This is from the Declaration of Independence. And that is essentially the right of us to basically, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. So I guess I don't really even understand sometimes why people don't even remember their own founding documents.
Well, that's some straight white man shit, as far as we know.
Yeah, exactly.
People didn't really come out then. A few of them were probably sharing a hotel.
Yeah, but basically it did institute
Philadelphia.
While you had those oppressors oppressing other people, they were also recognizing oppression and saying, hey, we're not going to take that from the British, So, they wrote it in there. There is a loophole there for people.
There is, and it's very interesting. The depth of thought there, the recognition that people will tend to accept oppression until it becomes unbearable. That's why when you look at any country that really had a revolution, America is actually an exception. When you see revolutions, it's usually because the circumstances are so terrible that it's worth it to them to risk their lives to change them. America, it was a weird circumstance because the central government was so far away that they were like, well, fuck this shit. Why are we paying these motherfuckers?
Well, that's
that was unusual.
Right. You had an American elite class saying, why should we pay up to these fucks when we could make a shit ton of money here on our own if we just didn't have to pay?
What are they going to do? They're over there. We're over here.
Exactly.
Actually, the same thing did happen with the American mafia. When the mafia first came over, they were paying Sicily.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And that was part of Luciano's whole takeover was about kind of getting those guys out.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like it's oftentimes the establishment, in whatever sense, they don't recognize the own harms that they do to themselves. And so you can write that type of stuff into those documents and think that it's never actually going to come around on you until it does.
Well, this is what's interesting, Tusker, because it's, I mean, what you just did, reading from the founding document, I don't have to tell you, man, that's like a right-wing kind of thing, to start going back to the Declaration of Independence, to start quoting the Constitution. But, you know, they're not always wrong. And when you look at the, you know, back in the day, when they were trying Abby Hoffman and the Chicago 7, they were the ones who would have been quoting the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. You know, it's people who are being crushed by the establishment have a tendency to go back to the founding documents and claim them for themselves. Today, liberals or blue MAGA or whatever we're calling it this week, they have control of the institutions, so they don't feel a need to fall back on that. But you're right that the government has become oppressive, and as a result, the society is becoming unstable. And the fear of a conservative dystopia, that's a very valid fear. It's what I've been predicting pretty much since we started the show. And a lot of stances that I take that some of our people don't like, it's really been about that. I've really been trying to argue, listen, if we don't change course, that Handmaid's Tale you're worried about, it's coming. It's coming. We have to change course. And I see it. It's I feel like a Cassandra on this, you know, with every passing month, with every passing year, that America comes into sharper focus.
All right, I want to address one thing real quick. It's on Twitter. We can't put the tweets up on the screen because I just saw it on my phone. We don't get the tweet responses in our thing, but this isn't the same person who tweeted back at us last week. But Tamara, if you're still watching on Twitter, says, so gross, right-wing opportunists, meaning us, comparing BLM to Jan 6. Here's the difference. If BLM were storming the Capitol, there'd be no jail time because they'd be dead. Your privilege is showing. Well, yeah, if there's absolutely no doubt that if BLM stormed the Capitol, they'd be dead. Of course, the Capitol Police would not have opened the doors for the Black Lives Matter protesters the way they did for the January 6th protesters. So that's one sort of flaw in that comparison that you say we're making. That you say we're making. But the accusation that we're comparing the two things, I mean, that's just a very vague thing to say. Oh, you're comparing this and that. I think we've made very, very clear that we are not saying there was no crackdown on the Black Lives Matter protests. Russell, have you had a chance to watch that Newberg Sting documentary? I sent you the link. About FBI entrapment of 4 black Muslim men in my hometown of Newburgh, New York. It was bought by HBO.
No, you sent, when did you send it?
A couple weeks ago. The link is back up on YouTube. That this was a movie about 4 black Muslim men, very poor men. A couple of them were mentally ill, living in a halfway house, you know, just really, you know, these guys were very bad shape. They were entrapped by an FBI informant who came to the local mosque and tried to recruit them into a quote-unquote terrorist plot. And they are serving 25 years in jail right now. There's a whole documentary made about it. And so, of course, the FBI is a terrorist organization in and of itself. I would say that, obviously. And they infiltrate all kinds of groups of people. And throughout history, they have mostly targeted the left. Absolutely. I'm not denying any of that. And I'm not saying that they didn't infiltrate or target BLM and that they didn't single them out for their revolutionary left-wing bents. I'm not saying any of that. This is about numbers. This is a game of numbers. 1,000 of the 10,000 people at the rally face federal charges on January 6th. You've had 300 BLM protesters charged federally out of however many million took to the streets.
I wouldn't even say it's a comparison between January the 6th and BLM. I would say it just reckoning with the fact that the same government institutions will utilize every single tool in their toolbox to affect whatever movement they're against.
Of course, right. Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
If you want.
No, that's a good way of putting it. But, you know, there are a lot of people, like I said, they use the term compare because if we mention the two of them in the same paragraph, that constitutes a comparison. in their view. So
Right.
anyway,
You're favoring one over the other.
I just wanted to respond to that because I did apologize to the guy because if we were unclear, because I didn't make a point to acknowledge that in the last show, and I did feel like perhaps we should have, right? To say that, yes, of course we acknowledge the government infiltration and targeting of BLM to an extent. We're just saying it wasn't to the same extent. That's all. Anyway. All right. Is that everything we got for the evening?
I think so.
I think it is. Let's play our patron scroll once again.
Well,
Tusker, do you have any other points?
Yeah, I was just going to let you say bye to you guys, and then you guys can finish out the show without me.
Oh, no. I mean, do you have anything else you want to say? We can hang out for a few minutes if you want. Doesn't matter.
No, I mean, I think I agree with you on the Trump thing.
You don't want to read the Magna Carta? You show off? How about the Constitution? Want to break that out?
Yeah, you want to pull out some Rousseau now?
No, I'm going back to Hammurabi's law. Okay,
yeah, right. Exactly.
We're going all the way back to Cyrus the Great, Dick.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Tusker. All right, Tusker, everybody.
Speaking of Cyrus.
Is Cyrus here in the chat tonight or no? Cyrus couldn't make it.
Nah. Now I don't know how I'm gonna buy new jeans tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. We have to pay. We had to pay for that budget for Russell's mannequin popular wardrobe. We got a wardrobe budget now. Let's read some super chats.
I had to go in the attic. I had to dig out the pictures and the recordings and everything. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Before we leave, we do have a few super chats that we got to catch up on. David Young, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate that. Alvin Bragg seems incompetent. He dropped the tax fraud probe and went with something more minor.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Like it seemed like the tax fraud, they were on much more solid ground.
Well, it seems to me, and look, we don't know what the charges are going to be at this point, so this is speculation, but apparently what they got Trump on is a misdemeanor that can be charged as a felony if it was done to conceal another crime. So they might have another charge that they're looking to drop on him as well. Right. So that could explain that. But it is a good point for sure. And thank you for the donation, my friend. Russell has me wanting 2024 R's to flip POTUS.
Man, I'm not rooting for that. I'm just calling it like I see it.
All right. Well, thank you, Cool Blue. Life is about paying protection money. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Red
It's
Z.
true. You're always going to be paying somebody.
Always got to pay somebody. Got to serve somebody, as the man once said, right?
Honestly, I know a lot of mob histories you might have picked up on. I often feel like you got a better shake from the mob than you do from the forces that drove them out.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting.
You know what I mean? You made your payments. You had your envelope at the end of the month. It was clean. It was clean.
Exactly. Taya, thanks for the 449. Appreciate it, Taya. Thank you. Duncan, what did I say that's BS? What's your issue? Is there something I can help you with? I don't know what you're talking. You said that 4 minutes ago. Did I say something 4 minutes ago that was bullshit? I apologize for that. If that's true, if you want to clear that up, you got about 30 seconds to make your case, and then we're out of here. It was a fun show, though. We had a lot to get through. I feel like we went pretty quickly. It was fairly fast-paced considering all the content. This had potential to be another epic one. This could have been 4 hours, given all the topics.
We kept it tight.
I think it was pretty streamlined, pretty well done. I'm just vamping to give Duncan a chance to ask me what I bullshitted people on. What did I say 4 minutes ago?
We were like people who are actually qualified to be doing this.
Yeah. All right. Well, no answer. All right. Well, maybe if you get it in after we sign off, maybe we'll address it next time. But I don't know.
I don't want to go back that far, but your mother was a hamster said like 10 times to have your money out of the bank by Tuesday. Yeah, there he is. He's saying again Tuesday. Listen, man. Honestly, this is why I don't have my money in regional banks. I have my money in Chase, which is evil. But I figure if Chase goes down, I mean, we're on motorcycles in leather fighting the Lord Humongous, right?
Exactly. Well, he gave us $50, because he's going to take his money out of his bank. So thank you. Your mother was a hamster. Appreciate it. Chris Bishop, your show doesn't feed my Trump derangement syndrome. Very sad. Yeah, no, we apologize. Maybe that's what people are a little upset about. No, I knew, like I said, I knew that was going to rub some people the wrong way, and it did on Twitter, and maybe some people in here. I'm not sure. We had a lot of people chatting tonight. Thanks, guys. Sorry for reading white guy stuff. Oh, no, that's okay, Tusker. We appreciate that. It's always important to hear that.
We're doing our Robert Frost special on Wednesday.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's like the whitest thing we could find.
I prefer Trump and DeSantis, says Glacier Glider. See, like I said, we have a very viewpoint diverse crowd here. A lot of people from all over the spectrum, which is what we like to see. It makes the show more interesting. It makes us more able to express our views honestly, which was always our goal getting into this. You know, you never want to prepare your audience to expect the same thing, because then it becomes predictable and boring.
It's also a trap. Then you can never have a heterodox opinion if that's what your audience is built on.
Right. Exactly. You know, that's why we like to even follow up some of the better viewed shows with the gossipy stuff with 2 or 3 in a row with really none of that, you know.
Right.
It's like when radio
so we don't
puts
feel
out
like
OK
whores. Computer,
they follow that up with Kid A and Amnesia. You know, they follow the big hit up with the 2 abstract pieces there. That sort of theory of the case there. Anyway, all right. Well, I gave you your chance to confront me, but it's been 4 minutes and you haven't substantiated your claim of whatever I said that you felt was not accurate or not right. Or anyway, I've given you an opportunity to respond. You have not.
Yeah, you know where I don't want my money? SVB, Signature Bank. Like banks are fucking evil. Like you find me a not evil bank. Come on, man. They're
you know who should get into the banking? That Mike Lindell. You know, My Pillow. He should open a mattress store for people to keep their money in.
Yeah,
probably do well.
Yeah, exactly. Like where am I
got the
supposed to
pillow.
put it?
Yeah.
You show me a bank that's not corrupt, that also your money's not in danger of evaporating one afternoon, as we have seen. Right? I mean, it's you know, if it's not there, it's going to be Citi. It's going to be. They're all fucking evil, man.
Yeah.
Like I can't keep it in a drawer.
So if you live in New York City and you're not in Chase, you're walking like 3 miles to the bank.
Well,
Chase is everywhere
that's
in New York
another
City.
thing. That's another thing.
Yeah, it's impossible to bank anywhere else in New York City.
I mean, anywhere else you would bank, it's the same.
Yeah, same
ethical
same
quandary.
Shit. Yeah, exactly. Same shit. Where's the Vanguard bashing today? No Vanguard bashing today. Vanguard free show. Sorry to disappoint you, sir. But you DWRWC.
Yeah, exactly. Look. I looked into aspiration and I heard some things about it that concerned me. So I backed off on it. Yeah, exactly. They took my money, gave it to the state. I'm now jumping through hoops trying to get it back. This is the thing, man. I mean, when you're dealing with these kind of fly-by-night banks you've never heard of, like, you don't know what's going to happen with your money. You know why I need to bank with Chase? Because I'm not rich. I can't risk that. I can't have all my money evaporate in a bank collapse.
Like this. It's a good one. Good one, Scott. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, we had a great crowd in here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back here on Thursday, and we should have a pretty big announcement to make Thursday.
Oh, yeah, Nick, man. Nick, my bad. I hope you saw it. I was supposed to, Keaton told me to email you. Nick did some work on that.
Oh, yeah. No, I asked Russell to email you. I guess he didn't get around to it, but we did play that, but go back and watch it. It's probably about the half-hour mark, but yeah, we did it. And thank you. Nick Invold said you are credited in the link of this video. But Nick, if you don't mind, send me your latest Bandcamp link, because for some reason I can't find the Bandcamp link on the old videos, which I know I posted it to them, but I was going through the old live streams today and I couldn't find your Bandcamp link. But yeah, GFDFDA is Nick Ingvoldstead, who does the music for us. He created that Mannequin Dobular hip hop track, and he's also done the track for our intro song. So thank you so much, Nick. And it is up there, and people liked it quite a bit. So you can go back and watch it. I think it's about a half hour into the show. Alrighty, cool. I guess that's everything now. Is that right? Is that for real?
I think so.
All right. Well, folks, thank you so much. Like I said, we will be back Thursday. We hope to have a big announcement that we can formally make on Thursday. That is kind of exciting. And so we will see you back here Thursday. What is that? 2021, 22, 23? Yeah. March 23rd at 8 p.m. Live streams every Sunday night and Thursday night for those of you who are new here. If you are new here, please, please, please like the stream and hit that subscribe button to stay in touch with us so that we can see you all again. Don't count on the algorithm to feed us to you again randomly. Just hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you get a notification, and you will not lose track of us. And if you're on Rumble, Rockfin, any of those platforms, thank you for watching, and please follow us there. Arpoon, $1.99 for the Dobular Wardrobe Fund. Thank you very much, Arpoon. We appreciate that. And
now I can get some socks.
Now he can get some socks, indeed. Thank you guys very much for watching. Russell, get your singing bowl ready for our new signature sign off here. We will see you guys Thursday. Be safe. Be well.
Courage.
Please clap.